In the heart of country music's timeless tradition, where stories are woven into the very fabric of our souls. Gather round the table for a journey into the heart of the songs, the singers, and the stories that define our world. Welcome to Season 2 of Stories Round the Table with Hudson and Joni. Bringing you these unforgettable conversations, Hudson James, executive producer, co-host, and singer-songwriter.
Hi, I'm Hudson James, and I'm incredibly passionate about sharing these stories with you. Season 2 delves deeper into the world of country music, revealing untold experiences and invaluable information. Grab a seat and your favorite beverage, and let's all enjoy the show together.
And I'm Joni. Hudson and I are very excited about Season 2. We're going to introduce you to some wonderful new guests who will share their story about where they came from, how they got their start, and what inspired them to follow this incredible journey in country music.
Joni Harms, executive producer, co-host, and singer-songwriter, a true icon of Western music. Her impact on the genre is undeniable. She's not just a singer, she's a storyteller, a keeper of the Western spirit. Her contributions have been recognized by the most prestigious organizations in Western music. The International Western Music Association has honored her repeatedly. In 2003, she received both Female Vocalist of the Year and Song of the Year, culminating in her induction into the IWMA Hall of Fame in 2020. More recently, in 2022, she was awarded the Team Penning Co-Write Songwriting Contest Award. The Academy of Western Artists also recognized her exceptional talent, including naming her Entertainer of the Year in 2002. Jimmy Murphy, executive producer and music manager. Vernell Hackett, public relations director and journalist. In the heart of Nashville's vibrant music scene, she's a fixture, chronicling its history and shaping its narrative. Her byline appears in respected publications, including American Songwriter, and she has contributed to major news outlets like Reuters. From covering the CMA Awards to in-depth artist interviews, she's a respected voice, capturing the essence of the music, the stories behind the songs.
Hello, listeners. This is Vernell Hackett, your Public Relations Director. We've got a fantastic lineup of guests this season, and we can't wait for you to experience these authentic conversations. Get ready to pull up a chair.
Jonathan Svoboda, social media executive. And Brett C. Burks, producer and singer-songwriter. Join Hudson and Joni as they sit down with the legends and the rising stars, sharing the tales behind the tunes, the laughter, and the tears that shape the soul of country music. Produced by the Story Weaver Studio.
Welcome back to Stories Round the Table with Hudson and Joni, folks. This week, we're honored to have a true voice of the modern West join us. He's not just singing about the cowboy life. He's living it. A fourth-generation livestock producer from the ranches of New Mexico, he was breaking horses before he could probably drive a car. From the rodeo arena to writing some of the most recognized contemporary cowboy anthems, his authenticity shines through every note. Please welcome the one and only Randy Houston. Howdy, partners. Get ready for a treat on Stories Round the Table with Hudson and Joni. Today, our guest is a celebrated figure in the world of country western music, a songwriter whose work has been embraced by the genre's biggest names. Voted a top 5 male entertainer by the Academy of Western Artists in 2007, and their Male Vocalist of the Year in 2010. He's also a multiple Wrangler Award recipient. Beyond the accolades, he's a genuine cowboy through and through. Let's give a big howdy to the fantastic Randy Houston. Joni and I are always thrilled to bring you fascinating stories and incredible talent here on Stories Round the Table. This week is no exception. Our guest is a man who embodies the spirit of the West, from the dusty trails of his family's New Mexico ranch to the stages where he shares his heartfelt songs. He's a real-deal cowboy who just happens to be a phenomenal songwriter, with songs that have resonated deeply within the cowboy music community. We're absolutely delighted to welcome the legendary Randy Houston to the table. Joining Hudson and Joni on Stories Round the Table this week is a true cowboy and a celebrated voice in country western music. A fourth-generation rancher, a former rodeo competitor, and the writer of some of your favorite contemporary cowboy songs. Please welcome the one and only Randy Houston.
Unfortunately, Joni is in travel today doing some shows, and she just does not have good Wi-Fi signal in order to do the interview. She does give her deepest regrets on not being able to be a part of it today to meet with you. Randy, I truly thank you for taking the time to come on for this interview. I know you're really, really busy. You have a lot of things going on, so I truly appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Now, Vernell did mention an interesting story, and it's not really related to your music, I guess, but you had a huge forest fire that left like a circle around your property?
Yes, in 2022, actually it was the U.S. Forest Service started the fire. They do control burns, which is a good part of forest management. I'm certainly not against controlled burns or prescribed fires. But the trouble was they did it during a drought year, and they did it when it was during our windy season. Every spring in this part of the West, it's very windy. But they had two fires that got out of control. They coalesced. The fires burned 341,000 acres and hundreds of homes and other buildings. So it was devastating, and we're still recovering and will be recovering for a long time. As you mentioned, it did not burn our house. The fire got right up to the edge of our property, but it didn't. We had within a half a mile of our place, at least somewhere between 50 and 100 homes burned.
Wow, that's just insane.
Yeah, it's hard to describe even what it's like. One of the things people don't, even I who live out here in areas where there are big ranches, it's hard to comprehend 341,000 acres. But here's an example to give people an idea. If you can envision what 2 miles is, if this fire had been 2 miles wide, it would have been, I believe it's 273 miles long. Or if it was 1 mile wide, then double that. That'd be like 546 miles long.
Wow.
That's how much 341,000 acres is.
Wow. That's a lot. It's a lot of damage.
It is a lot. Yeah, it is. It's incredible, and it's the aftermath left a really beautiful area just denuded. It took out. Most of the fire was in areas of timber. Yikes! Was it last year, the year before? Texas had a huge fire, burned 1 million acres or so. Most of that was out in the wide open spaces in the plains. Our fire was timber, big trees, mountains.
Wow. Nuts. Now, maybe share to us, you'd worked on a lot of ranches and stuff before you got into music. So what made you decide to go into music?
I think maybe my deal was unique, and I was sure blessed to be able to have the opportunities I did. My mom had her master's in music. She was a musician. She played the piano and had a passing knowledge, or at least a limited ability to play a bunch of different instruments. So there was the influence from her, of course, because she was frequently playing. And then also one of the things that isn't completely dead, and certainly wasn't completely dead as I was growing up, is people getting together to play music. And so we might have, we might do some cattle work with some of our neighbors, And if any of those neighbors played the guitar, did any singing, well, they'd bring their instrument, and when we were all done with the work, then we'd sit around and play music. And it became more purposeful. We would enjoy, it's like, let's do this on purpose, or even having a party and making sure we invited, the 5 or 6 or 8 people we knew that enjoyed doing that and played instruments to sit around and kind of jam.
What made you decide to pursue it as a profession, besides just sitting around with your friends?
So you're gonna want to make me admit that right here in front of the whole world?
No, I can edit. But everybody, there's a lot of people that will sit around the campfire. They've got great talent. They can probably become very successful, but they just don't go after it.
I know, and the only reason that I said that, it was certainly tongue in cheek. I don't mind saying it, but I think I look back on it, and it's just like, maybe it was meant to be. I don't know. Maybe I would have done it anyway. Who knows? But one of the things that really pushed me was I was really close to Baxter Black, who, of course, most of the people that know our genre knew of Baxter Black. Well, he and my dad worked together. And so when I was an early teenager, I was hanging out with Baxter all the time. And he and I would sit around and play and sing. And then as time went by, Baxter quit doing as much veterinary work and was putting in time performing. And of course, I knew about that. And by then I was in college, and Baxter would stay with me whenever he was touring, and he'd come in, and that kind of intrigued me, the performance stuff. But the watershed moment, we had, I was in college up at Washington State, and there were a group of us there that played instruments, and we'd get together and jam. And one of the guys, one day, he said, you know what, I talked to the guy that owns the Down Under bar, and he said he would give us free beer if we just go down there and jam on the stage at his place.
Oh, that's why you didn't want to share, because it involved free beer.
You better believe it. And we were poor college students, and so it seemed like, wow, this is amazing. So we did that for a while, and then one of the guys that was in our little jam group pulled a couple of us aside, and he said, I think we could get paid to do this. Let me put out some feelers. He did. We formed a 3-piece band, and I ended up playing for the rest of the time I was up there at Washington State. We had gigs almost every weekend.
And that's how the ball started rolling. I've mentioned, I've heard the stories from a lot of different singers, and some say the same thing. It just happened. It just happened. And there's other ones that I've spoken to that, are pursuing it for 20, 30 years before it ever happened. And so it's kind of just interesting to kind of hear the background of how the artist became an artist.
I agree. No, I absolutely agree. And for people that come from my background, which is rural and very rural, is we are not typically people that like to get out in front of a crowd and show off. And so that's something that I've always found fascinating, is that people that come from true ranching backgrounds that find their way into entertainment and are unique individuals. They really are. Most ranch people would rather just keep to themselves. And so, yeah, I can't explain it. I love it. I enjoy it. And I certainly don't regret that I went down that road.
Well, music has a way. You either are into it and it's a passion and a love, and once you experience that side of it, I don't think it matters if you come from a ranch or a city skyscraper in New York. If you have that passion in you, that's really all that matters, and that it's going to come out eventually.
Yes, and that is likely. I have to agree with you. If you truly have that passion, then I think you're gonna follow it. And again, back to my background, my mom gave me all the opportunities to learn different instruments, and it's, maybe the parent-child dynamic. I'm not sure what it is, but I resisted. And then when I was in junior high, and again, I told her we didn't have much money, or maybe I didn't say that, but in a rural ranch background, you don't have much money. We don't get paid much. I begged for a guitar, and my mom said, all right, I'll get you a guitar, but you're going to learn to play it. Oh, I will. And she said, if you don't, I'm going to sell it. And so they got me a guitar. I messed around with it for a while, got bored, quit playing it, and she sold it. So once I started golly, was I in high school maybe? Must have been when I just started high school. Here I was again, and I said, all right, tell you what, I'll come up with as much money as I can, but will you help me with the last little bit? And she said yes, and that time I learned to play it.
I can't play a single thing. I think the closest thing I can play is a PlayStation, and I struggle at that.
Well, see, that's why there are those of us out here that have that passion.
I can sing, but I certainly can't play nothing. I've tried and tried and tried, but for me, the struggle is when you're singing and trying to remember how to play something at the same time. I don't have that capacity to do that. So the artists that I see that have a guitar, and then they go to a piano, and then they go back to maybe a violin or a bass or whatever, and they're playing multiple different instruments throughout the concert, and they're singing the whole time. That's a gift. That's a gift. That's not something you just learn. That's a gift.
And you know what? It certainly is a gift, but then also we have to develop it.
Oh, absolutely.
While I was, I mentioned that first band that we had, since we were only a three-piece, we were, we were kind of lacking on some of the instruments, so I did. And I learned to play the mandolin, and I learned to play the fiddle. And, it wasn't like, oh gosh, I've got to learn to do that. No, I was excited to learn to do it, and I worked really hard at it. And I couldn't have done it without the innate gift. I certainly agree with you there. But I did. I worked pretty hard at it.
Now, I've got to ask, you've been doing music for quite some time. And what's one of your most memorable experiences? Maybe it was opening for somebody, maybe it was meeting one of your favorite artists, but what was your most memorable time in the music business so far?
Well, for people in the Western genre, I think my journey has been a little bit different. Joni had some of the same experiences I did, and her journey is different than most of the Western artists. I was in Nashville, and so I was around a lot of the people that we would label as stars or consider them to be stars. So I had a lot of opportunities to do things in Nashville with Nashville recording artists, and yes, it was pretty amazing. At the beginning, when I first started to do it, I was absolutely in awe, and then as time went by, it wasn't nearly as shocking to be able to be doing stuff with some of those folks. So there are several experiences like that still stick in my brain. But you may think that it's a little bit crazy. One of my very best experiences in a performance was I was the only artist. I had a band, and I was the headliner of the band, and we played for a group of farm and ranch people in Idaho for an outdoor concert. And to me, that one just stands out the most. There were people in the audience that I knew. I had lived up in Idaho, but it was a really large crowd, and it was just outstanding.
So what do you got on the projects for now? More shows, more releases?
I have a really good show coming up next week called the Lone Star Cowboy Music Gathering Texas. That is a really, really good show. There will be multiple artists there in different venues performing, mostly over a 2-day period, Friday and Saturday of next week. It'll start out Thursday night, but the bulk of it will be Friday and Saturday. And I'm pretty excited about that. I'll get a chance to see a bunch of my ranch friends as well as a bunch of my performing friends. As far as new releases go, I don't have anything on the table, but interestingly enough, we just completed an old release a couple of nights ago, I guess 2 or 3 nights ago, with, now consumers consume music digitally now. We have the streaming services. CDs are not near as popular as they were. Vinyl is making a comeback, but even so, the sale of physical products has largely been replaced by the digital streaming services. So I did an album with my daughter several years ago, and I had taken it down off of the streaming services because I was having trouble with my digital distributor, and it's been off the internet for golly at least 2 years, and we finally put it back up a couple of nights ago, and it went live today, so it's available out there today.
Nice.
And people can find it by searching Randy Houston, but the credit on that one is Randy Houston and Hannah Houston. And I want to take an opportunity now, or maybe we'll do it more than once. My name confuses, the spelling of my name confuses people, and it makes it hard for them to find me. Instead of spelling my last name like the city, like I spell it Huston, more like Huston rather than Houston, even though it is pronounced Houston.
Right. Well, and there's also a lot of Randys in country music too, so that can make it a little difficult as well. But we'll make sure people can find your stuff. In the podcast, we'll throw out your website, your social media links, and we'll do like a week's worth of promoting of the interview with you on YouTube Shorts and things of that nature. So we'll definitely make sure people can find it pretty easily.
Cool, that's great. All of the music streaming thing really is fascinating to me. We do not get paid very well.
No, I know.
Yeah,
I got a nickel the other day from some of my stuff. A nickel. Man, I'll take that down to the dime store, right?
There you go. You got it. But at the same time, I'm getting more exposure in a limited period of time than I've ever had before. I've always been an independent artist, and independent artists have a real tough time cracking into the same space that the major labels occupy. So getting radio airplay was always really difficult. And now there's so many artists that are streaming and are placing music on the streaming services. It can be a real challenge to stand out and get people to listen. But I've had pretty good luck with it, and it just blows my mind. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know how long I've been on, say, for instance, Apple Music. I've been on Apple Music for, I don't know, a few years now, not terribly long, because I didn't have stuff on the streaming services. And I just got a notification from them that I've now had 630,000 plays. And
that's pretty good.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. It is a lot. And then social media, my songs have been background music. A lot of these are snippets. It's a 15 or 20-second video, but I've had millions of those where one of my songs is used in the background or as the background music in a TikTok video, Instagram, Facebook, that sort of thing.
The whole online distribution stuff, and Spotify, Pandora, iHeart, all of that stuff, it's great. But it does allow definitely for independent artists, and now even a lot of mainstream artists are going independent because, well, they don't need the label. They just need an online distributor. Saves a lot of money.
Right.
And so
Yep.
it does make a lot of things easy. On the same token, though, maybe I'm just old school. I'd still like to own the CD and have it signed by the artist.
And there are people like you. There certainly are, and you know, I'm sure I'll continue to make some CDs, but gosh, you're in the minority. You know?
Oh, I know. And I don't own any anymore. I use all the online platforms just like everybody else does. But even if I wanted to own a CD, you can't go into Walmart anymore and find them. So.
Right. And you know, we talked about it that vinyl has made a comeback, and I think it was in 2022, 21 or 22. Vinyl sales were greater than CD sales, and you know, one of the stats that I found fascinating, at least at that time, it's probably changed, but at least at that time, when the sales of vinyl eclipsed the sales of CDs, only 30% of the people buying vinyl had a turntable. They're just like you. They wanted the art. They wanted the physical product, not necessarily to listen to it, but to have.
Just as a collection.
Yes, yeah.
You know, some people collect baseball cards. I always liked CDs, or I even had a bunch of vinyl one time. And in my little home studio, I put all the vinyl records in frames and put them all up again on the wall, just because it was just a cool, nostalgic thing for a music room.
Yep, I agree. I certainly do.
Well, we're getting close to the end. Unfortunately, this was a really good interview. But I always kind of like to ask when I get a chance, is there any advice that you would give to somebody that's trying to go into the profession that you're in?
Music in general, or the Western genre of music?
Western, just music in general, becoming a performer, a songwriter?
I think for any of those, whether your sights are set on being a performer or a songwriter, it's just diligence, it's interest in it, and then doing your best to perfect your craft to be as good as you can possibly be. And I think one of the things that I missed out on and didn't realize is that there's information out there to help you on that journey. I always figured you just either had it or you didn't, and you learned how to play your instrument, and you went at it, and either you were good enough or you weren't. But the reality is that you can get better and better and better, and there are avenues to help with that. And with all of the things that are available on the internet, you can learn about songwriting, you can learn about singing, you're playing, you're performing, any of those kind of things can be, you can get information off the internet about that to, perfect your craft, or at least get it to the best level that you're able. And beyond that, it's just the passion. It's following that passion and not giving up on it, which sounds so overstated, or we hear that over and over and over, and I can just see the young artists out there rolling their eyes. They're like, oh yeah, everybody says just keep at it, but I really believe in that. And one of the things about it is, let me come up with an example. So I was living in Nashville. I was working in mainstream country music, but I was still doing my Western music, which is just a lonely subgenre of country. And I got a call one day from a guy who was a manager for some other Western artists, and he said there's an advertising company here in Nashville that's looking for a cowboy guy to do some national advertisements, film some national ads. Would you be interested? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. And I ended up doing those ads. I had never done any television ads before, And the reason that I got those is I was there. I was in Nashville. I was working at it. And this manager knew of me just because I was always out there on the street. I was always trying to move forward in, my career. And so it might have seemed like it was just out of the blue that Terry called me, but I was around and making it known that I was around.
Well, and we are really running out of time, but you hit a good point. It's about the passion, and I mentioned this earlier on a different interview, but it's like Randy Travis. He performed at that little bar for how many years? Never gave up, and it really is about that passion and just staying strong to it and keep going until it eventually happens, and it will.
And that there's one other thing that I think bears mentioning is that if people are hoping that they are going to be the next big star, the next huge star, that may be an unrealistic goal. Head for it, but it may be unrealistic. At the same time, and if you're enjoying what you're doing, that's another part of it. You need to really not just the passion, but the enjoyment. And it ends up that you're not going to be at the very top of the heap. Enjoy where you are. Enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the music. Enjoy what you're creating. Otherwise, I've seen people just drive themselves crazy chasing the brass ring, hoping that they're going to be the big star, and that's not necessarily what it's about. It's about enjoyment and living your life to the best you can.
Absolutely. Well, Randy, I thank you so much for taking the time to come on for this interview. I know you have a lot of things going on and you're busy, so I truly, truly appreciate it. Good luck with everything that you're doing, and can't wait till you come out with some more stuff.
Well, my pleasure. I appreciate being invited on, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again someday.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for Stories Round the Table with Hudson and Joni. We hope you enjoyed this glimpse into the heart of these stories. If you loved this episode, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to connect with us on our website, storiesroundthetable with hudsonandjoni.com. We'll see you next week, ready to share another story.